Check one, check two. Hey, everybody. This Saturday, September 16th, at the Neutral Ground. Thank you so much for that. Yes. This Saturday, September 16th, at the Neutral Ground, we have Laura Prado. We have Sarah Wall. We have Caitlin Harris. We have Molly McCarthy. We have Nate Kaplan. And we also have some guy named Dr. Lowe opening the show at 8:30. So possibly with special friends. Definitely with special friends. Okay. So Saturday night at the Neutral Ground. See you guys there.
Hello, everybody. My name's Jack. This is also Jack. This is Dylan. We play in a band called Hound. We're playing tomorrow at the Saturn Bar with Buncho and Blue Smiley. We got T-shirts. You got to go to the show if you want the T-shirt, though, you know? One of those deals. We'll see you there, folks.
Hey everybody, I'm coming to y'all from Voodoo Fest, which is happening at the end of next month in City Park in New Orleans. It's the biggest 3-day music festival in New Orleans, and we have incredible internship and job opportunities for music industry forum students. First, if you'd like to be a street teamer and you want to go to the festival for free and you want to distribute materials at shows between now and Voodoo, get with me. I'll be in the lobby after forum. If you want to work for our VIP and Platinum teams and work as a golf cart driver, as a liaison during the festival, we have a lot of positions for that, so get with me. I'll be in the lobby after forum. And we also have 2 great internship positions where you have to meet the requirement of 120 hours for Loyola, do your whole internship with Kate Duncan. It's a great program, so if you want to know anything more about any of those, meet me in the lobby afterwards, and I will set you up.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I hope you guys had a good weekend. And this announcement is about making that cheese, making that money. Who here knows about like Bitcoin, Ethereum, stuff like that, cryptocurrencies? I recommend you guys do a little bit of research on it. But I'm going to have a meeting in front of Monroe on Thursday at 12:30 so we can talk about this. I believe that we are way smarter when we're talking with each other. We're all doing different research. I'm trying to make a lot of money, and if you're trying to make a lot of money too, meet me out in front of Monroe at Thursday, 12:30. Yeah.
What up, everyone? So I'm not here to make a personal announcement this week. Probably next week I will. Just want to really quick. I know everyone knows that there's a lot of shit that's been going on in the world right now, right? Like everyone knows this. So this is supposed to be a quick announcement. Just think about that. Channel that energy into your music. You know. Use it to create a message and to speak to people. We can make another song that talks about meaningless shit. That's fun. We all do it sometimes. Let's also make some music that's meaningful and powerful to everything going on right now. All right.
Hey guys, I'm Dan, and this is Taryn. We work with Winter Circle Productions. If you guys don't know Winter Circle, we throw Buku Festival. We do the booking for Republic, Joy Theater. We do a lot of shows at Gasa Gasa, a lot of other places around town. We are signing up street team members today. If you are interested in joining our team, please come up and talk to us. Taryn's going to have a table set up.
Yeah, we'll have a table set up. We'll have a table set up if you guys are interested or want to get more info and different opportunities that we have right now, and also some chances to win free tickets. And you guys can check out our fall calendar of all the upcoming shows we have.
Hey guys, my name is Kate McCreary. I'm here from the College of Business, and I have an internship opportunity for you all. So we run the Venture for NOLA internship program, which places you with a local startup in New Orleans. It satisfies the 120-hour credit. It's 10 hours a week. We actually had one featured startup last year, was Professor Kappel's Echo startup. What did interns end up doing for you?
They did everything from marketing and helping develop marketing plans to product development and features, helping me to trying to determine new feature requests and costs and all that good stuff. So they were very, very helpful. They were good.
All right, so I don't mean to compete with whoever spoke before with the Voodoo Fest. If you don't want to do that, then come do Venture for NOLA. Again, you get a lot of great exposure to the business community. You know, it's a look into entrepreneurship. You get to work with founders and actually do real work. You get to see if starting a business is for you. It's probably a lot harder than all of y'all and me know. So if you're interested in that at all, then I have these great flyers with our entrepreneur in residence on it, Kyle Berner. But please pick one up outside and then shoot me an email. Thanks.
Hey guys, how are y'all doing? I'm really sorry for being late, but I just wanted to wish everybody a good National Suicide Prevention Week. I just feel like it's something that definitely needs to be discussed throughout this week around this campus. I actually released a song today called Breathe, which touches that same topic, just going through my personal struggles. And I hope that, whoever listens to it, it can help out. You can find that at YDS Music. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic. Make music that matters. That's important. I like that. Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is Teddy, and our new website drops on Friday. No, I'm sorry. I just had to play along. No, we're trying to plan out tech elective offerings coming up. So we want to ask you, Teddy in the spring is planning on teaching Internet Tech 2. If you want that to happen, please send him an email and say, yes, I want to take that class. And I also want to get some sense, if we had an opportunity to do a Pro Tools certification class as a 2-week class right after school, like the last 2 weeks of May. So it would be outside of the regular school session. If you're interested in that, send me an email so that when I tell them that we should do that, I'll have this evidence of saying, look, I have all these people who want to do that. And same thing for Teddy. Here, you tell them about your.
Yeah, Internet Tech 2. So if you've taken Internet Tech 1, you know all about that. So it's just the next level of that, getting way more in depth with all the same stuff that we talked about in Tech 1. If you want to make websites, definitely recommend taking that class. Only done it once in the past, but people really enjoyed it. So just let me know if you're interested. And also you can just come tell me afterwards too if you're interested. So.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
We're done, baby.
Hey, y'all. I'm Jim McCormick. We are starting for the first time ever the Loyola Songwriters Association, and we're going to do a bunch of stuff outside of, not all of you can take my class, which is probably a really unfortunate thing. So the associate, we're going to do some real-life pitching opportunities to recording artists, film and sync usages, and things like that. If you're interested in the business end of songwriting, come talk to me after this forum. There's a sign-up web page at the famous, look up Loyola Songwriters Association. You'll find it out there somewhere. But come talk to me after the forum here if you want to know more. We're going to get going in a couple of weeks.
Okay, please grab a seat. Our guest today is Jonathan Taplin. He is the Director Emeritus of the Annenberg Innovation Lab at USC, and he's author of the book Move Fast and Break Things: How Facebook, Google, and Amazon Cornered Culture and Undermined Democracy. He also had a career as a film producer and even served as tour manager for Bob Dylan and the band. Welcome, Jonathan. Well, thank you for being here.
Good to be here.
Would you first give us just an overview of your own biography and your path to where you are now?
Okay, so I'm going to date you guys. I graduated from Princeton in 1969, but I was lucky enough the first year that I went to Princeton to go to the Newport Folk Festival in 1965 and happened to meet Albert Grossman, who was Bob Dylan's manager, and then Bob. And that was the year that Bob went electric. And I don't know if any of you guys know the history of this, but the folk music scene, which the Newport Folk Festival was very insular. And when Dylan decided to play electric music at Newport, it caused an outrage. And that Sunday night, when he played, I would say half the audience was booing. And that was kind of a shock to Dylan. And so Albert asked me to go to work for him as a road manager for a band called the Jim Kweskin Jug Band, which was a folk group. And so I used to do that as a weekend gig. And then eventually I moved up the stack, so I became Dylan's road manager and the band's road manager. And so I got out of Princeton in '69 and went to work, moved to Woodstock and went to work full-time for the band. And so '69 was an amazing year because it was the year of Woodstock, so the band went to the Woodstock Festival. And so we were living in the real Woodstock. The Woodstock Festival was not in Woodstock. It was in another town way south. And so Friday night of first night of Woodstock, you know, the New York Times had this headlines like, crisis, there's no food, there's no toilets, it's just total chaos, it's raining, 350,000 hippies in the mud, and the New York thruway is closed because there's so many people trying to get off into this town. So they sent a helicopter which landed in my backyard, and Saturday morning we flew to Woodstock, and literally when you came over the hill, it was like a biblical Cecil B. DeMille movie to see 400,000 people in a field. You know, it just never happened before. Wow. So we played that, and then in August, I took Bob and the band to England for the English version of that, which was called the Isle of Wight.
Right.
And then, you know, we continued to tour for quite a few years. And then eventually, when I went to England, I met George Harrison, because the Beatles all came to the house where we were staying at the Isle of Wight. Right. And we had an evening where the band and Dylan and the Beatles all played in our rehearsal space for about 5 hours.
Wow.
And you know, there were only 4 of us in the room with them.
Incredible.
And we kept kind of pinching ourselves, but we didn't dare turn on a recording machine or do anything. You know, it was just like, okay, this is a moment, it happened.
Yeah, this is an ephemeral moment.
It went, you know, but it was great.
Wow.
The interesting thing was the touchstone for them all was rockabilly music.
Right.
It was like Elvis, Carl Perkins, that kind of music. That's the stuff they all knew together.
Yeah, that's the commonality. It's interesting that you start with Dylan going electric as the moment, because very often in this program we talk a lot about the sort of the watchword, you know, innovate or die.
Right.
And that was a moment where I think Dylan saw the writing on the wall, and he knew to be current over the long run, if he wasn't going to rehash his career, he was going to have to reinvent and do something to maybe shrug off some fans, but ultimately gain a broader audience.
I think it was something slightly different.
Love to hear that.
So, you know, it's hard for you guys to realize how close music and politics were married in the early 60s. So Dylan was part of the civil rights movement. I mean, he was down in Greenwood, Mississippi, not very far from here, singing at civil rights marches. And so he became a kind of icon for my generation, in which we believed that music could change the world. And so when the March on Washington happened, so Dylan sang at the March on Washington. The times there are changing, when your ship comes in, all these songs, you know, they were part of the movement. And then people began to put him up in this kind of pedestal, like, you, Bob, you tell us where to go. And he began to worry that wasn't what he wanted to be. He didn't want to be a political leader, he wanted to be a musician. And he went to England in '64, in the spring of '64, and he started hanging out with the Beatles, right? And they were having so much fun, and everything was so serious what he was doing, and everybody wanted to, protest song and send a message. And I think he just said, well, I want to have fun. And also, just before that, John F. Kennedy had gotten killed, and so I know that freaked him out a lot.
Right.
And so I think it was more a sense of, look, these guys are having so much fun, and Dylan, in his own ways, changed the Beatles too. I mean, you think about the distance from I Want to Hold Your Hand to Norwegian Wood is only
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of messaging in there.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Well, thanks for sharing. I want to talk about your book.
Yeah.
I love your book, and I think your book is really important for our students to read and to understand, because you challenge the idea that and the conventional wisdom having to do with the internet revolution. The internet revolution, which gave with one hand and took away with the other, as far as we're concerned. You say pretty plainly it's not a good thing.
Well, let me explain.
Okay.
So I think, I use the internet, I use social media, it's a tool. But what happened for me was Levon Helm, who was the drummer and the lead singer in the band, was a guy who made a very good living making music. And the band, as you all know, I mean, I produced The Last Waltz, which, we did that in '78, right? So that was really the end of the band as the band, right? And yet, through the '80s and through the '90s, their records kept selling. So as a musician, Levon made, even in the '90s, he was making $100,000 a year off of record royalties, right? And then in 2000, Napster happened, and that just stopped. And it just so happened that the same year, he got throat cancer.
Yep. And he was, 70 at the time?
Yeah. And so he couldn't go out on the road and continue to make a living as a musician. And all his royalty income from records just stopped. And that seemed to me really unfair. And, in 2005, I could go on YouTube and see maybe 4 million, 5 million downloads, streams of band tracks.
Yeah.
But
you
he
knew
he didn't get a cent from that.
You knew what he was going through. Yeah.
And I knew what he was going through. And, a bunch of his friends, Larry Campbell and other musicians, gathered around him and kind of trying to pick him up. But he died broke, dead broke. And we had to put on a benefit for him after he died for his wife to keep their house.
Yeah.
So that just seemed wrong. And here's my problem. YouTube goes to musicians or record companies and says, your music is going to be on YouTube whether you want it to or not, for free. The only choice you have is, do I want a little of the advertising money from YouTube for that? So if you could get 1 million downloads on iTunes, you would make $900,000.
Yeah.
If you got 1 million streams on YouTube, you would make $900. That's not enough to pay your rent in New Orleans. If you're a working band, that's not going to. And 1 million streams is a lot.
Well, this is an important point. It's like the internet companies, many of which stand on the backs of creators, we take for granted, but they're a form of crony capitalism. Whereas I think that they have their PR is that they are libertarians and they like to they let the market decide. It's the invisible hand that controls them. But we know that there's a lot more to it than that.
Well, look.
They're in bed with politicians on the right and the left.
They are libertarians. You know,
when it works for them.
What they understood, but libertarian, let's understand what that means. What that means is, you know, the internet was begun, and because I ran an innovation lab, I was lucky enough to meet Tim Berners-Lee, Vince Cerf, John Seeley Brown, the guys that started the internet. And none of them had any patents or anything. They did it for free because they were academics, and they gave the code for HTML and HTTP, and all the code that runs the internet was just donated by academics. Right. And the money was put up by the federal government.
Yeah, the DOD, right?
You understand, the internet was started by the Defense Department because they thought someone was going to drop a bomb on Houston, and the whole telephone network would go out. So we needed some new self-repairing network that would root around problems. Okay, so whatever the reason, the US government funded the internet. So by the late 80s, a bunch of libertarians, Larry Page, Peter Teal, Jeff Bezos, came out of West Coast universities and realized that the real secret of the internet was it was going to be a winner-takes-all business. That there was going to be one search engine because you would never need a second search engine.
Right.
There was going to be one e-commerce company because you would never need a second e-commerce company. Right. And eventually there was going to be one social network because if 2 billion people were on Facebook, why would you want a second social network?
Right.
So they were right. Winner takes all. And you know, 10 years ago, the largest companies in America were General Electric, ExxonMobil, Citibank. Today, the largest companies in America are Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, they won it all.
Yep.
And you're right. They influence politicians. Google pays more money to lobbyists than any other company in America. They influence legislation. You know, there's legislators right now who are saying, well, maybe it's not such a good thing that there are 45,000 ISIS videos on YouTube. Maybe we ought to stop that. And Google says, no, that's free speech.
Right.
You can't pass a law because these companies are protected by something called safe harbor.
Right, I was going to ask you to talk about safe harbor.
So safe harbor means you, if you're a musician and you don't want your tune on YouTube because it's free and so no one's going to buy your stuff if it's always there free on YouTube, you cannot sue YouTube to take it off permanently. You can send them a takedown notice and they'll take it down in a week or so. But then it'll go back up the next day because some other user will put it back up. So you can never get it down permanently. It's a game of whack-a-mole that you will play. And the problem, look, I believe that streaming music will eventually be an incredibly robust business that will make all of your livings fabulous. But as long as there's one place where everything is free, you will never get enough people to get onto the subscription-based services. In other words, Spotify said to the music industry, by this point, 75% of its users would be on the premium tier, $10 a month.
Right.
And it's 25%. And that's because YouTube. Because as long as it's a free service, a lot of people still want to have free.
Yeah. Well, you touched on one individual in particular I wanted you to talk a little bit about, is Peter Teal. And I'd like to hear about his influence in particular with regard to sort of that dichotomy of libertarianism that I think is a little disingenuous.
So does everybody know who Peter Teal is? Okay, a few people. So he may be the most important person you've never heard of. So Peter Teal, if you ever saw the movie Social Network, is the venture capitalist that funded Mark Zuckerberg. So he was the first investor in Facebook. Before that, he had formed a company called PayPal. And he formed PayPal because basically Peter Teal has this philosophy that capitalism and democracy are not compatible. That the mob, what he calls the demos, that is you, are impeding the capitalists. Now, Peter Teal has read far too much Ayn Rand for his own good. And so he believes in the heroic capitalist who's always battling against the stupid mob, that is us, and is never able to get done his heroic project because democracy impedes his. He also said that the stupidest thing we ever did as a government was give women the vote. Because women are too sympathetic to
bleeding heart causes.
Bleeding heart things, and so they should have never had the vote. That's where he's really at. So this guy is worth about $12 billion. He's got an island in New Zealand that he's ready to go to with a bunker when the pitchfork brigades come for him, you know, and his mansion in Mountain View, California. He's got escape plans, in other words. And he doesn't give a fuck, you know. He will rule and get as much as he can out of you until it all comes down. And he doesn't really care. But the problem is that he's on the board of Facebook. So, you know, a lot of what the problem with Facebook is, for instance, in this past election, so Facebook is this open platform. Anybody can use it for propaganda. Trump used it, the Russians used it, everything. So Trump spent $85 million on Facebook. Facebook had 3 employees embedded inside the Trump campaign to help them target you. And a lot of the targeting of some of you who may be a little more liberal than some of the Trump voters was to suppress your vote. So for instance, they targeted young African Americans and sent them these ads which said, Hillary Clinton says you're a super predator. And, you know, that's how bad she is. And so that wasn't to do anything but to keep you from voting, thinking, well, they're all the same and stupid. And so, and by the way, it was very successful. 96 million eligible Americans did not vote. 96 million people who could have voted didn't vote in the last election. And that was presidential. So a lot of it was vote suppression. And then, of course, they had a lot of help from Russians and other people, so they would post something on Facebook, and then they would hit it with 1 million bots. Everybody know what a bot is? It's a robotic account. It's not, there's no human behind it. It's just a fake account that's put up there, run by a computer network. And those bots would click on the post, and of course it would go right to the top of the trending topics, so everybody would see it. And they did the same thing with Google's search network.
Basically gaming the system in order
Totally.
to,
Totally. And nothing has changed. The next election, the same thing can happen.
It can, and the question is, will it? And the other aspect of Peter Teal that I found, you know, really interesting is his behavior with Gawker as well, where, you know, he's all for freedom, freedom, freedom until it doesn't work for him, in which case he'll spend 8 years.
Everybody know this story?
You know
so
about
Peter Teal is, when he was at Stanford, he wrote a book railing against what he called multiculturalism and the homosexual agenda.
Yeah.
This is a book he wrote. Turned out he was gay, but that's okay. You know, so a lot of people in Silicon Valley knew he was gay, but Gawker, which was this magazine, which was kind of randy magazine, decided to tell everybody that he was gay. And the article was, Peter Teal is so gay, but it's so cool that he's so gay, you know? And so he set out to bring down Gawker. So he couldn't do it by suing them because they outed him, because there were too many people who knew he was gay. So what he did was he got Hulk Hogan, who had pushed this, who had been, Gawker had published a sex tape of Hulk Hogan.
Yep.
And so he said to Hulk Hogan, I will put up all the money in the world for you to sue Gawker, and you just can't tell anybody that it's coming from me. Yeah. And so Hulk Hogan said, hey man, great. So they sued Gawker, and they basically put them out of business. Yeah. And they did it in such a tricky way that Gawker's insurance company could not pay for any of the settlement. And they basically bankrupted everybody to do with Gawker.
Right.
So, I mean, he's for free speech, except when it's about him.
Yeah. When it works.
Right.
I'd just like to shift gears for a second, because we touched on this idea that there are these companies, Facebook, Google, Amazon, that behave as if, and they speak as if the buds of the next Facebook, of the next Google, the next Amazon are out there.
Right.
That some kid is about to launch the next new big
Right.
thing, when really we live in this zero-sum game environment.
Right.
Can you talk about how, whether in your view this is even remotely possible, and if not, why not?
So Eric Schmidt, who is the chairman of Google, says competition is just a click away, right? And so, and they always say there's some kid in some garage somewhere that's going to put us out of business.
Yeah.
Right. So the kids at Snapchat actually believe that, right? So they went, young guys at Snapchat, went and formed a social network and said, we're going to take on Facebook, and we're going to put them out of business. We're going to really compete and everything.
Yeah.
So they put out this thing, Snapchat Stories, and it was, you know, kind of innovative. You could draw on pictures and you could illustrate things. And it started to get very popular. And it got up to about 100 million users. And Facebook came to them and said, we'll buy you for $3 billion. And Snapchat said, no, thanks, we're going to stay independent. And so Facebook said...
How do you think that went?
Facebook's going to said, basically, you're going to regret that.
Yeah.
You know? And so Facebook basically set up a Kill Snapchat team. And a week after Snapchat went public at $28 a share, Facebook came out with Instagram stories, WhatsApp stories, and then Facebook stories. They didn't even bother to change the name, you know, of the app.
Yeah.
And unbelievable amount of advertising money went into Instagram and WhatsApp that had been on Snapchat, because they were at scale of 1 billion people, and Snapchat was at 100 million people. So it was so much easier for advertisers to go to Instagram and WhatsApp.
Right.
And so Snapchat's stock came out at $28, and it's at $13 today.
Yeah.
And advertisers are fleeing them. They're in a total crisis. And so that's what bullies do. You know, I mean...
and there are other aspects to Facebook that people aren't necessarily commonly aware of. A lot of people, you hear them talk about Facebook wants to sell my information to people, when that's the last thing on their mind. They don't want to sell your information. They want to vend your information, access to your information, to your data. They carve us up into buckets and buckets and buckets, and they can give advertisers access to that, but they would never part with it. The fact that when you have a Facebook account and you browse the internet and you're on a page that has a Facebook like button on it, Facebook knows where you are and what you're doing. The idea that they and Google control 90% of the advertising on the internet,
right?
That's enabled them to destroy businesses.
So, I mean, let's be clear what Facebook does.
Yeah.
Facebook has one business, which is to manufacture individual profiles for advertising. So how do they do that? Well, each of you spends between an hour a day, free labor, working for Facebook to help them build these things, which then earns them $25 billion. You get some convenience, but you're working for Facebook, and you're working for free for Facebook. Now, some of us think you should get paid for some of that, or somehow you should get some of that money, just the way your local newspapers should get some of the money of all the looks, all the money, the attraction and attention that's going to local newspaper content on Facebook, and the local newspapers are dying, and Facebook's taking all the money. So, I mean, Josh Marshall's a friend of mine who runs a blog called Talking Points Memo. He says, I'm just a serf for Facebook and Google, because that's who I'm working for, and they take all the money.
Well, and they do this by invading our privacy, right?
Right. But it's not an invasion. You've given it up.
Well, exactly, and they think that they think, and rightly so, that people don't feel like their privacy matters, or that it's a bargain they're willing to strike. But can you make an argument to the people in this room why they might want to care about their privacy?
So let's just think about where this goes. There's 3 examples I can give, and because I've been on a book tour, I have people come to me and say, "Oh, you should know about this." Okay. So first one was a bioethicist came to me and said, so that app on your phone that tells you how many steps you climbed yesterday, so that's an accelerometer in your phone. And that same app can record the tremors of Parkinson's to a 95% accuracy. In other words, Parkinson's disease has a very particular tremor that app can understand and say, this person has Parkinson's. So that information is sitting on the phone in the open. Well, what's to keep them from selling that to health insurance companies or your employer?
Right.
So that's one example.
Well, yeah, we talk about Apple Watches or other wearables and Fitbits and things like that.
So the second one is Consumer Reports came to me and said, look, you think your auto insurance rates are set by how well you drive. They're not. They're set by where you drive. So if 2 people, say, living in the Garden District, have the same car, drive the same number of miles, but one works at a funky school down in the lower 9th Ward, it's probably going to have a higher auto insurance rates than the other. Now, how do they get that? Because once you're on State Farm or whatever, they're getting information, they're buying information, GPS information from Google. Right. So that's another example. So where does it go ultimately? I mean, where's the scariest thing? So Alibaba, which is the largest internet company in China, has something called Sesame Social Credit. And it has 200 million users on Sesame Social Credit. So, it's a credit score, like you all have a credit score based on whether you are paying your credit card bills on time. But Sesame Social Credit is different. It combines that stuff with, if it thinks that you play video games too much, and it knows that you're playing 5 hours a day on video games, that's going to lower your Sesame social credit score. If you happen to get 3 jaywalking tickets in Shanghai, that'll lower your Sesame credit score. So now the Chinese government wants everybody in China to use Sesame social credit because they think it will make for more harmonious citizens. It will make you a better conformist. And by the way, all the social dating apps in China use Sesame social credit. Like to recommend yourself, like I'm a good citizen.
And we could you could imagine an Uber or a Lyft having the same sorts of components,
I'm sure.
right? Because
no, I mean, look,
you're reviewed as a rider.
Facebook could turn that on in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
They could, you know. So my take is, what does this do? It makes you a damn conformist, you know. And I'll tell you something. I did some stuff in college that I was not interested in my parents knowing one thing about, right? In our day, you know, if you smoked weed, that was not so cool. You know, you had to hide in the dormitory and put a towel under your door and shit like that. Really?
Oh, they don't have to do that anymore. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's a good thing for your whole life to be available to everybody. And your parents are probably on Facebook and watching you.
Yeah. Well, just to bring it back to the music industry.
Yeah.
I mean, for years, I've referred to the music industry as the canary in the coal mine for so many other businesses.
Totally true.
Right? I've watched as an entire middle class in the music industry has been carved out, completely carved out. There are haves and have-nots. As you say, in your book, the internet companies have created this world for themselves where they're perceived as doing no harm. And although I feel and I teach my students that it's our job to adapt to a new reality, it seems like there's a tilted playing field slightly with the DMCA and Safe Harbor and the Internet Freedom from Tax Act and everything else that we had stacked against us. You know, Amazon killing off bookstores. What happened to record stores?
Right. Amazon killed them too.
Amazon killed record stores as well. And there's this, these companies have in fact been evil in that regard.
So what
do we do?
Here's why I think you're actually in this class at the exact right moment. Because every business has cycles, right? And you know, right now the TV business is kind of at the top of a cycle and is about to go down because there's too many TV shows. I'm just be honest. Okay, so 8 years ago there were 190 dramatic television series in the whole country, right? Today there are 500. Now the business didn't grow one bit. All it did was divvy up into smaller and smaller niches. So that's unsustainable. And all these new places, Hulu, Amazon Prime, you know, Netflix, they're pouring money into it and everything. That's eventually going to end, okay? But the music business is at the bottom of a trough and starting up. And I know that because I see the real numbers coming out of streaming. And it's incredibly encouraging. So despite my beef with YouTube, if you look at Apple Music, Tidal, Spotify, Deezer, the big streaming platforms, they are growing 30% year over year.
Yeah.
So that's a really good situation. So if we could get this YouTube thing fixed, and that would just be a very simple thing. It's, you know, I'm going to go see her tomorrow in Nashville. There's a congresswoman named Marsha Blackburn from Nashville. So I'm going to the Americana Music Festival tomorrow. And she's put forth this idea of something called take down, stay down. So basically, when you say to YouTube, I want you to take down my tune, and I want it to stay down, then the burden gets put on YouTube to stop it. Now they do it, they could do it like that because they have, you guys all know, they have Content ID. So they know every song that's being uploaded to the platform before it gets uploaded. So if there was a block on your tune, it would never get on the platform in the first place. They could do that in a heartbeat. They don't want to do that because they're greedy motherfuckers, but it's, you know, but they could. And so if we got that straight, then Spotify would do what they said they would do. They would have 100 million people paying $10 a month, and that's a lot of money to flow into the musicians. And that could happen. And I don't have any doubt that it could happen. So look, I mean, there's just a few tweaks, and the music business could be in the greatest place it's ever been, because first, you know, in the old days we used to complain, oh, it's so hard to find stuff, right? But now pretty much everything that exists is available somewhere on Spotify or Apple Music. It just, there's hardly, even the obscure stuff. And the other cool thing that I've found is, I work with these guys at Concord Music, which owns a lot of old catalogs, like the Stax catalog and Creedence Clearwater and stuff like that. They're making these box sets, which people of my generation have both money and nostalgia, and they're paying like $140 for everything Creedence ever made or something like that. Or, you know, the Sam and Dave everything collection, you know, and that's a good business too.
Well, and it's, excuse me, and I remember as an artist manager having to pay an awful lot in co-op advertising just to get listening posts and some kind of racking in a store. Somebody hears the name of an artist now, they can fire up Spotify and hear it, not just know the name. And I mean, there are a lot of benefits. I try to impose upon them the idea that the importance of the idea that they are the ones with the power. That although every business that starts up, every internet music business stands on their backs, they need to have a say in the matter.
So there's one other problem that we've got to deal with, which is the discovery problem, right? So last year, 80% of the revenue in streaming went to 1% of the product. So that's like horrible, right? I mean, we used to talk about the 80-20 rule, right? So that 20% of your product would make 80% of the revenue. So like 1 in 5 things would be a hit, right? But now it's 81. So Jay-Z and Beyonce and, you know, Taylor Swift and Adele are making millions, but there's probably 3 or 4 million tunes on Spotify that have been listened to by the musician's girlfriend, mother, and best friend, you know, and that's it. So that's a discovery problem. And so that's maybe the role for the curator or somebody who says, okay, I have really good taste, I'm gonna get a following, people are gonna do, I mean, kind of what Pitchfork did, only at scale.
At scale, I mean, what we lost with the DMCA was radio you know, we got radio consolidation, we lost great radio, so Discovery went down the tubes with that, and
just not
to playlists
be,
maybe.
Not to be nostalgic and, you know, oh, in my day, but let me just tell you, when I was on the road in '69 with the band, right? You would go, like, if you took a tour in the South, you would go to San Antonio, and there was unique music in San Antonio. Sir Douglas Quintet. Then you'd go up to Austin, and Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings, and there was unique music in Austin.
Yep.
And there were radio stations in each town that were just playing local music. Then you'd go over to New Orleans, and Dr. John and Alan Toussaint and all of that. And then you'd go up to Memphis, and there would be completely unique Otis Redding, Sam and Dave. And then you'd go over to Nashville, and there'd be completely unique. And then you'd go up to Chicago, and the blues of Chicago would be completely different from what was happening in Detroit. Right. And in each town, there would be radio stations that would just play local music. And somehow, we have to get back to something that looks like that, you know, and I don't know how we do it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how. You don't have an answer for that?
Well, I mean, I suppose, you know, local music blogs or something.
Well, yeah, I think what we're seeing a little bit, we're seeing the influence of playlists kind of coming up and becoming more of a thing.
I mean, I certainly still think that New Orleans has a local scene.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, I could tell that just from the club life.
Yeah.
But whether it's being leveraged as a New Orleans sound that obviously Mac Rebenak and Alan Toussaint, you know, who were buddies of mine, got to do, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that this is a place where a lot of people subsist on music and don't necessarily thrive.
Right.
And so we need to
right.
find sustainability as well.
Right.
We have only a few more minutes left, and I wanted to give people a chance to ask questions, if you'd be okay with that. Anybody, questions? Yeah, David.
Thing that I wanted to ask you about.
Can you speak up really loud, because I have rock and roll hearing.
One thing that I would like to address, and maybe you could give some insight on, is specifically Facebook ads and why they're so expensive, like for what you actually get out of it. I feel like over the last few years they've actually gotten more expensive. And personally, when I've been using it like in conjunction with a marketing budget, I see the payoff not being nearly like what it should be from certain other sites for the amount of money. And also, they've done something with the algorithms of like who sees your post for like an artist page or like a business page, which I have, which you have to either have people go into their own settings and click see first, like on people that like your page, or if you boost the post, which pretty much everyone has to do in order to actually reach like a significant amount of your followers, you have to boost the post, otherwise couple people will see it. So like if I don't boost a post, I'll have like 3 likes. If I boost a post, I'll have between 50 to 100. That's a big difference. And the pricing, so over the summer, I did 2 posts that I boosted for 5 days. That's not very much. I put the budget at 60 for that whole course max for the 2 posts. It exhausted the whole budget, so I paid $120. And I got, I forget the exact numbers, but yeah, somewhere between 50 to 100, closer to 100 likes on both of those, and then it was supposed to be targeting a specific link, a YouTube link. I only got about 180 actually click-throughs, so like clicks on that link where, sure, that counted as YouTube views.
But what's the question?
I'm giving, the question is, why is the pricing so expensive? Because for someone in my position, I can't afford to just do that every time I have a small announcement.
Okay, because they've figured out that advertisers have only 2 places in the world to go to: Google and Facebook. In other words, last year, 88% of all internet advertising went to either Google or Facebook. Right. So they are essentially what economists call rent takers. You're the slave working for them. You're the sharecropper, and they're taking the rent because they can. And it's not just you that's complaining about this. It's everybody. But because they're a monopoly, we have no alternatives.
Right.
You know, if somehow Snapchat had become a really great thing that could compete, maybe their prices would come down. Right. But there is no competition.
Right. That's what a monopoly looks like.
And that's what monopolies do. and that's why, you know, people seem to think, oh, these are just nice companies, and Google says don't be evil and everything. But they're not. They're monopolists, and they're screwing you, and they're screwing everybody. I mean, look, that's why, you know, Google makes a 30% net margin. If you talk about anybody in business, there's no company in America that makes a 30% net margin except Google. And that's because they're not paying for any content. They're just creaming all the advertising revenue out using everybody else's content.
Right. Tim, you had something to say.
John, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
My question is, we focus a lot on working musicians and being able to make a decent living as a musician, as a songwriter. And one of the things that in the current streaming model that just seems absolutely backwards is the split of the revenue, right? So as opposed, when I pay my $10, my $10 goes into the big royalty pool, and that royalty pool is split up or is aggregated with all other royalty pools, with all other payers. And then so somebody like Beyonce, who I don't listen to, gets a piece of my money. So why isn't it that my money goes to the people that I listen to? And so if I only listen to, let's say, 30 songs in a month, my $7 in the royalty can actually turn a pretty nice little profit.
Yeah. Okay, so look, there's a lot of people trying to look at this, right? And your colleagues at the Berklee School of Music are working on something called Open Music Initiative.
This has to do with blockchain.
And just the beginning, but it's essentially a blockchain idea that you could tie the rights and the payment to an individual composition. And inside that individual composition, you could divvy up the songwriting, even if there was 5 songwriters, and you could do all of that using blockchain. Now, it's still a ways off, but I think eventually that will emerge. I mean, look, the one thing that's really clear from earlier periods was that it pays to be a songwriter. You know, I mean, really, when you know, someone like Levon, the reason he had so little money at the end of the day was that he was not a songwriter. And what happened was when Napster hit, the master recording, record royalties got decimated, but BMI and ASCAP were still collecting money from every restaurant, every Gap store that was playing music, every bar, every performance on a TV show, everything. And so Robbie Robertson continued to do fine. And Bob Dylan continued to do fine because they were songwriters. Now, in the streaming world, that's still not worked out right yet. But eventually it will get to, I think. You know, because if you get to the place, I mean, just do this piece of math. There will be, my lab estimates, by the end of next year, 5 billion smartphones in the world, with a B. So if I could sell something for 50 cents to 5% of that market, that's like $100 million, right? I mean, it's the law of large numbers. It's pretty amazing if we could get everybody paying for their content. And you know, obviously, some of that would be people paying what they pay for Netflix or something, and some of it might still be ad-supported, but still at scale, it would be pretty astonishing.
I think you're making clear to, I hope we're making clear to the people in this room that you have to be aware of the technologies that are happening around you, that are coming up underneath you, because this impacts you directly forever. Go ahead, fight over it, but somebody's off.
So you talked about Peter Teal and Jeff Bezos and people like that. What do you think we should do as people, but also try to influence, I guess, the government to do to kind of curtail these people's power because I watched a documentary about I don't know what it's called, but it's on Netflix about Peter Teal, and I just am kind of like, what should we do to stop these crazy fools?
Okay, so, I mean, first thing we have to do is we have to be aware, and obviously it's a subject of my book, but we have to be aware that there used to be something called antitrust. In other words, there used to be a way where the government would intervene. And my point is, despite what the libertarians say, there is no market solution to this problem. Right. If I asked all of you to invest all your good money into a startup to take on Google and search, you'd walk out the room. You'd say, are you crazy? I'm not going to do that. So there's no market solution to this problem. So the only solution is the government saying, you guys have to act more responsibly. And that means more of the money has to flow to the people who are making the content, whether that be journalists, book writers, musicians, filmmakers, whatever. And so that's the first thing.
And this kind of governmental regulation isn't unknown. It happens outside the United States,
It's happened for years. And quite frankly, I make the argument that, you know, Silicon Valley would never have happened if there hadn't been 3 critical antitrust cases. One, the government sued AT&T in the 50s and made them license all their patents from Bell Labs for free to everybody. So that meant the transistor, the laser, the semiconductor, all these patents, which are the essence of the digital revolution, were free. And that led to the start of Texas Instruments, Motorola, Intel, Philips, you know, all these companies. Then there was an IBM suit, which forced IBM to unbundle software and hardware. So that allowed a little company started by Paul Allen and Bill Gates to get started, Microsoft. Then finally, the government sued Microsoft because Microsoft wanted you to have to use Internet Explorer and Microsoft Search Engine if you had a PC. And they stopped that, and that allowed Google. So the point is that antitrust actually leads to innovation. Right. So, I mean, my advice is, you know, push your legislators to think about this. I mean, I just was in Washington before I came here, and you know, was with Elizabeth Warren, and she totally believes in antitrust, you know, and going to try and do something.
Well, yeah, you can't push your legislators that way if you're not aware of it, and if you're not aware of the importance of it. And this is the importance of it.
Right.
Duncan.
Well, I don't think it has much effect on the music business, quite frankly. I do think the problem for me with net neutrality is if it gets eliminated, then your wireless carrier can bundle certain services for your all-in data plan and push some people outside of that all-in data plan, right? And the ones that are in the all-in data plan, you'll be happy to use, right? So the big boys, YouTube, Netflix, they'll be able to pay to get in the all-in data plan. But the little startups, you're not going to pay by the megabyte to watch video. I mean, that would be, you'd all of a sudden realize your bill was $200 a month, you'd stop it. You know, so that's the problem with net neutrality.
Sam.
You talked about staying informed. What are the best resources that you use to stay informed, like blogs or?
The best resources for staying informed.
Yeah.
There's a great blog called The Tricordist, written by David Lowery. David Lowery, I don't know if you know who he is. He had a band called Cracker.
Can't Prevent Beethoven, and then
Beethoven.
Cracker.
And he is, to my mind, he and T-Bone Burnett are the two leaders of the kind of artists' rights revolution, along with Roseanne Cash. There's another thing called Content Creator.
David Lowery, The Tricordist. I'll supply it to you.
And there's another thing called the Content Creators Coalition, which you can join as artists. And it's really good, powerful advocate trying to really help.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Good question. Thanks. Anyone else? Yes, Zach. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you, Raven.
Really? You had mentioned your vendetta against YouTube. How do you feel about YouTube Red as a subscription service?
I don't trust Google in anything. Yeah. You know, I mean, until they clean up their act and stop doing what they're doing to musicians on YouTube, I don't think anybody should be involved in YouTube Red. I mean, I just think they're crooks. Yeah. And they have to be stopped. And look, I saw this directly last week. You know, a foundation called New America, which I've spoken at and everything, had been funding a group called Open Markets, which is a bunch of really brilliant young academics who were taking on monopolies. And it turned out that Google started funding New America to a lot of money. And last week, the chairman of Google called the chairman of New America and said, you got to get rid of these people. And they threw them out because they had written a post on the New America blog which had said that, you know, Europe was right to fine Google for $2.7 billion for monopoly. And so, I mean, that's how evil these people are in terms of they just want what they want, and they'll do whatever it takes in terms of using their power to get their way.
Zane, I know you had a question, and I overlooked you. Sorry.
First question, for the takedown, stay down, this is like a really quick question. For the takedown, stay down, would that include, if I was an artist, I could communicate with YouTube and say, I am the owner of this content, and I want to be the only person who can post this on YouTube. Is that part of the takedown, stay down?
That would be one way it would work. Yes, in other words, you could tell them there's a legitimate copy on YouTube that's mine, but nobody else can put this up.
The other question I had was, as young entrepreneurs in the music business, what are some ways that, I guess it kind of goes with what Austin said, what are some ways that we can help with the takedown, stay down?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, I think my sense is like, for instance, the Content Creators Coalition is going to start a petition drive, so that's one way you could help. You know, I actually think that one of the things that I talk about in the last chapter of the book is that you guys may start your own kind of collectives, cooperatives, like Odd Future, things like that, where a bunch of groups could come together and work together to make sure that their content got paid for, got supported, and you could support each other.
I mean, I also think the bottom line is be involved in politics. Don't think it's outside your realm. Right. You know, there are issues that you need to address, and I have to say we touched on this for a second, but we should have another forum about it entirely. But the issues around the blockchain, I think, are going to be long-lasting, important changes in our business, and I don't know if you feel that way as well. But anyway, join me in thanking Jonathan. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.